Good afternoon. Myself, Engineer Ranadip Chakraborty. Yesterday we have discussed regarding few structural problems which generally takes place in the construction of the beams at site. Today we will discuss about the columns and the foundation. But before going to that thing, one small matter regarding the beam is to be discussed, which I just forgot yesterday. That is the lapping in bars. See, it becomes almost essential to provide lappings, because for longer span beams or the continuous beam, you are not going to get a single piece of bar running from the one end to the another for providing the reinforcement, as generally the length of one reinforcing bar is about 11.8 meters generally. So we are not going to get a single piece of bar for the whole beam without any lapping if the length of the total of the beam is more than 11.8 meter or so. Now lapping becomes, that's why, essential. There is two parts. One is lap length and the other is the position where the lappings is to be provided. First thing, this is the first part. We already know how to calculate the lap length. Lap length shall be at least the development length which is required for the proper bonding. Generally, if we calculate for the M20 grade of concrete and Fe 500 grade of steel, for bars in tension, it will come somewhere around 55D. So we have to provide it, say 60D, where D is the diameter of the bar. So that means if we are providing a bar of 20 millimeter, then we have to provide 60 times the diameter of that bar. That's 60 times the 20 millimeter, that is 1200 mm as lap length. Now the most important thing is where to provide such laps. It cannot be provided arbitrarily where just that length of the reinforcement is getting at its end. What I mean to say that, suppose we are having a beam of, say, continuous length of 16 meter and we are having a bar of 11.8 meter. So it is not like that we will provide the lapping at the end point of one bar, that is at the 11.8 meter out of the 15 meter. We cannot provide lapping in such fashions. It is to be provided at certain position of the total structural member, so that it doesn't evoke any untoward incidents in case of the structural instability, like in earthquake and similar other things. So we have to provide the lappings at such a position where the design parameters of that structural member is not of critical importance. There's mainly two design parameters for determining the reinforcement in terms of its quantity and the geometrical parameters of the beam. That is, we take into consideration the shear force and the bending moment. Now, as we already know that the shear force tends to increase near the support, and the bending moment for a single span beam, it is generally in larger magnitude at the middle of the span, but in a continuous beam it is also maximum at the near of the support, because in case of the continuous beam, the critical critical bending moment is the hogging moment at the support. So, we must provide the lapping at such a place to avoid this critical junctures of the structural member. Now, as I have said that the shear force tends to increase near the support, so does the bending moment in case of the continuous beam. Now, then where to put the lapping? We have to consider the bottom reinforcement and top reinforcement separately. See, in bottom we provide the bars to take up the positive bending moment, and at the top we provide the bars to take up the negative bending moment near the support, and it can be also used as the compressive to take up the compressive stresses of the beam in case of the doubly reinforced beam. So, for the bottom bars, it is most advisable that there shall not be any lapping in the middle portion of the beam, that is at the center portion of the beam, because here the positive bending moment is maximum and we are providing the bottom reinforcement to check up the positive bending moment. And in case of the top bars, if it is a single reinforced beam, then the top bars only perform within the middle span as hanger bar and at near the support to take up the negative bending moment. So, in case of the single reinforced beam where the reinforcement at the top face is not taking up the designed to take up the compressive stress, we shall avoid any kind of lapping near the support. But if it is a doubly reinforced beam, then even on the middle span it is taking the compressive stresses. So, where to put up the lappings? Now, considering the two facts, that the bending moment and the shear force, the most ideal location would be just about the L/4 position, where shear force is just gets its value gets increasing and bending moment tends to change its sign nearby from sagging to hogging. So, though the bending moment changes, but the magnitude of that moment is much lesser. Now, one more thing which I should mention over here is that during lapping of the bars, it is to be ensured that both the bars which are being lapped is properly tied, not only to the in between the two bars, but at every node of the vertical stirrup and the reinforcement junction. Now, coming to the columns. Column, as we know, is a vertical member which is axially loaded. Now, we have a certain awareness regarding that the column is compressive member. Then if it is a compressive member and we know that the reinforcement is used to take up the tensile stresses, then why do we use reinforcement in column? That is first to be understood before going into the next phases. See, there is two major things which the reinforcement performs in the column. First of all, it also takes the compressive stresses, that is direct axial compressive force, compressive stress. If we do not provide the reinforcement, then the size of the column will get much larger, because by an example I can tell that for M20 grade of concrete, the permissible axial stress is taken as the 40% of the FCK, that is the characteristic compressive stress. That is why you mentioned 0.4 FCK AC, that is 40% of the characteristic compressive strength of the area of the concrete. So it is much less, because 0.4 into FCK, that is 0.4 into 20 is only about 8 MPa. So the permissible stress in the concrete for the design in state method is only 8 MPa for the M20 grade of concrete. So it can resist the compressive stress of 8 MPa safely. But steel, on the other hand, say having Fy, that is the characteristic compressive strength of Fe 500, for Fe 500 grade of steel, the permissible yield stress is 500 MPa, and according to that formula, that is Pu equals to 0.67 Fy AST plus 0.4 FCK AC. Here for the steel part we see that it is mentioned as 0.67 Fy ASC, that is 67% of the yield stress of the area of the steel reinforcement. So we can take up to the 67% of the yield stress which is being earmarked for that grade of steel. For Fe 500 it will be around, if we multiply with by 0.67, that is 67%, we will get something around 350 MPa. So in a typical column of M20 grade of concrete and Fe 500 reinforcement, grade of reinforcement, the concrete can take only about 8 MPa, whereas the steel can take about 350 MPa. 350. It is almost like 40 times, more than 40 times, 42 to 45 times. So the capability of steel to take the axial compression is much higher than this concrete. So steel is used in concrete to take up the compressive direct stresses also. Not it is only used for the tensile stresses. If we do not use the reinforcement, the column section will be so large, but if we use the steel reinforcement, and as it can take 40 times more the direct axial stress than the concrete, with small amount of reinforcement we can resist large amount of direct stress. So the column section as a whole will get reduced. This is one part for taking up the direct stress. Now there is another aspect. As I have already told that columns are axial compressive member, but in all practical cases there will be some eccentricity in loading. You cannot make a column perfectly axially loaded in any typical structure. There will be some amount of eccentricity. Due to that eccentricity, that is the load not being at this passing through the line of action of the load, not passing coincidentally to the axis of the column will have a tendency to get bent in the direction of the eccentricity, and if the column is getting bent or having a tendency to bend, then it is obvious that there will be some bending stress, and if some bending stress is induced in the column, it is also obvious that there will be two type of stresses. One will be compressive in nature and the other will be tensile in nature. For compressive stresses, the column material, that is only the concrete part, is self sufficient. But what about the tensile stresses which is being induced due to the bending or the bending tendency of the column? Column having this type of bending tendency due to the eccentricity, in all practical cases, if not provided with the reinforcement, will suffer the tensile failure on the opposite face of the eccentricity. This is another thing. That's why the reinforcement what we put into the column, it is having two functions. First of all, it is taking up the direct compressive stress, also it is resisting the bending stress which is tensile in nature. Now, in a building frame, only the central column or the middle columns will have mostly the axial force and very less amount of bending, because it is being loaded from each end. So, ultimately the whole load is acting through the center, and bending tendency or the eccentricity is nullified by the action of the loads on the opposite directions. But the end columns of a building frame, the peripheral columns, if we see that peripheral columns is having loading only on the one side. If it is a intermediate peripheral column, it will be loaded only on the one side, there will be uniaxial bending, and if it is a corner column, it will have bending along a corner, that is the eccentricity is on the both the axes. It is a case of biaxial bending. So, the bending of the column is a predominant case in the peripheral columns, be it the corner or in the intermediate portion, and in those cases the reinforcement is of very essential in nature. This is another aspect. And one more thing which is very much of interest for all the new constructions, it is the earthquake force. See, when a earthquake strikes, it shakes the ground either on x-axis plane, that is in any of the two horizontal plane, back and forth. So, as the ground moves, the foundation which is embedded into the ground also moves, but a building, due to its inertia, will try to be in its own position and will try to resist that movement. It is similar to like we are just moving into a bus, as the bus just gets to halt or it brakes, lower part of our body which is on the seat in direct contact gets stopped, but the upper end of our body will have a certain jerk, because our upper end was also in motion, but due to this sudden braking, though the lower part has stopped, but the upper part will try to maintain its motion due to its inertia, and our body moves forward. Same goes for the building also. The lower part moves with the ground shaking motion of the earthquake, but the upper part tries to resist its motion and stays at the rest. So, there is a drag. The bottom of the building gets in its position, but the top part tries to retain its position. So, there is a drag. In this case, the columns of the building will have a serious consequence. Suppose this is a building, say, if it moves like this, then in this side all the columns will get a uplift tension, and in this side it will be a compressed, but in this side it will bend and will have a tension moment, and there will be a uplift pull on the columns. And in that scenario, the column, though these are designed as compressive member, will not remain as compressive member, will turn into tension column. It is a very interesting thing that columns also becomes a tension member when in case of the earthquake. So in that case, as you already know that the concrete is mainly used to resist the compressive stresses in nature, and we use the steel to take up the tension in general. So when during the earthquake the column is becoming a tension column, it is obvious that the concrete is not going to resist that tension. It is the steel in that column which will resist the tension. From that aspect also, the reinforcement in the column is very much important. Now, there is one more, say I am just giving a tricky note for understanding this matter. Pedestals. In pedestals, what is pedestal? It is a structural member which is actually loaded but not having its effective height more than is 3 times the its least lateral dimension. It is a short member actually, say short column, very short column. Being it short in effective height, it will have very less tendency to get bent. That is why in case of the pedestal we do not take the reinforcement for calculation of the strength. It is not required because the tendency of bending is very less. If reinforcement are taken into consideration, it is only for the purpose of that compressive forces, not for the bending stresses. Now there are few points which I would like to mention regarding the column construction or column casting, which are very much neglected at site. First of all, the height of the column which can be cast at one go. It is already known by us as per our IS code, IS 456-2000. 1.5 meter height is allowed for casting at one go. Now why this 1.5 meter? Because it is the maximum permissible height for allowing the concrete to get dropped. Whenever we are casting a column, we drop the green concrete from its top into the formwork. So that height shall not be more than 1.5 meter, because if it is more, there will be tendency of segregation. What is segregation? Segregation is the separation of the aggregates from the matrix of the concrete. Now the question is why it gets separated. See, concrete is a homogeneous mixture of the binding agent, that is cement, coarse aggregate, in general stone chips, fine aggregate, in general sand, and water. So in this mixture, if we can observe, separate components have separate magnitude of its specific gravity. Starting from the highest to the lowest, the stone chips will be having the highest specific gravity, then the sand, then the cement. Now, if we are just pouring it from the little height, then the action of the gravitational force while it is falling will not have much chance to separate out those aggregates from the matrix, the whole mixture, as the dropping height is much less. But if the dropping height is more, then the gravitational pull will affect based on the specific gravity of the each material and will tend to split each of the material from the matrix according to their weight. In such cases, we will see that these stone chips will be just deposited at the bottom, then the sand, then the other mixing matrix, remaining of the matrix. So, the concrete, which is the homogeneous mixture, will not remain homogeneous. It will be layered in separation of the material according to their specific gravity. So, this thing should be avoided. Second thing is that again the cover block. Cover block is to be fixed surrounding the column reinforcement. We already know it is generally 40 millimeter as per the IS code. It can be more also depending on the condition of the site and durability requirement and exposure. Generally it is 40 millimeter. So, this cover block of 40 millimeter shall be ensured, because if we are not giving proper cover blocks at the side of the formwork between the reinforcement and the formwork, what will happen that the reinforcement, whole reinforcement will get shifted at one side of the formwork, and there will be higher amount of cover at one side and lesser amount of cover on the other side, and it cannot be corrected further, because once it has shifted and the column gets just hardened, we cannot do anything other than demolishing it and reconstructing it. And even after, there are some, I have seen many people who do like this, though up to the some height of casting the bar gets shifted, and later on the next higher stage they will just try to bend in the bar and make it proper so that the cover is maintained. In that case, it is much more dangerous, because you are not maintaining the axial perpendicularity or the verticality of the reinforcement, and in that case there will be bending stress generated at the turning points, because you are not loading the reinforcement vertically, axially. So, it is to be also avoided. Third most important thing is that if we are just constructing the column in successive stages, suppose we are constructing a column of 4.5 meter height, then we will do it in 3 stages, 1.5 meter plus 1.5 meter plus 1.5 meter. Now, it is a tendency that to cast 1.5 meter and having a top face of that 1.5 meter casting as flat and smooth, and casting the next stages onto it. If we do that, there will be a separation, there is no connectivity of the successive stages. We must do some arrangement to make a key, so that the subsequent stages are interconnected and keyed together for the proper mechanical locking. We can easily do it by just after finishing the top surface, and at the end just taking out some material, some concrete, green concrete from the center of the column portion, so that a hollow space is left, and when the subsequent stages will be cast, then that hollow space will be filled with the concrete and it will act as a key to the subsequent stages. Also, we can place a half bag brick into the top portion of the concrete column and cast surround it. So after some time, say about 4 hours, we will take out that brick. So automatically there will be a void space in proper rectangular shape, and it will function as key to the next successive stage. This is another point. And one more thing is that the curing of columns, it is highly neglected. Column is a very important structural member. Why? Failure of column can cause global failure of the structure, whereas failure of any other structural member, be it slab or beam, will not cause the global failure of the structure, but the failure of column can cause the global failure of the structure, because it may so happen that suppose one portion of your slab has failed, only that portion will fail and that portion will collapse, but the remaining portion of the structure will not be affected by that. You can just make that thing good. Same goes for the beam. Only the portion of the structure for which the beam is taking the loading will fail. Remaining portion will stay safe. You can reconstruct that part only. But in case of the column, if one column is failed, then it is obvious that for that structure to be stable, the surrounding column which are there around the failed column will have to take the load of that failed column on their shoulder, I mean on their top, so that the structure sustains. But those columns are not designed for those additional loading. It is to be taken into a very serious note. Those columns are not designed for that additional loading which is now being shared from that failed column. So if the loading capability of this column, which is taking the sheared load of the failed column, gets exited, this column will also fail, which is having a great probability of occurring. Now if this column fails, load of the two of this column will be shared to some other column, and definitely it will also exceed the load carrying capacity of that column, and that column will also fail. Now in this fashion, in sequence, the whole structure will have a collapse, and it will be a disastrous situation. So columns are very much important for the structural, from the structural point of view. But as we know that in case of the RCC, it gains the strength gradually, not from the day, I mean it does not get the whole strength of it on the single day or the day one. It gets strength gradually, day after day as it gets aged. Now for gaining that strength, the hydration process of the cement is to be completed, and for that hydration process it requires the moisture into the pores of the concrete. Now where this moisture will come from? Definitely the water which has been mixed during the making the concrete, but it will get dry out after some time. Then in the later stage, where it will get the required amount of moisture for the complete hydration of the cement, to get the concrete gets its full strength, definitely you have to give it from the outside by way of curing. So curing is very much essential in case of the column, and in case of the column it is also difficult to keep it continuously cured, because you cannot make any arrangement to keep it, I mean under the depth of the water, like which can be done on the slab, because on slab you can do ponding for the curing. But in case of the column, you cannot make any arrangement so that the moisture can stay on its surface, like ponding arrangements. So you have to do something which makes it wet, and keep it moistened throughout the curing period. How can we do it? By using the gunny sacks, that is jute sacks, or we can also do by putting some cloths around it and keep it moistened with continuous watering, or say watering at intermittently on both the half of a day. But in most of the cases, this curing part of the column is neglected. It is to be taken due care of at site. There is one more thing I would like to tell you, that regarding, as I have told regarding the curing. What is curing? Curing, people think that curing means you have to keep the concrete moistened, or keep watering the concrete. Curing doesn't mean keep watering of the concrete. Curing means to prevent the moisture from escaping from the concrete structure. You can do it either by preventing itself from the surface of the concrete, by putting some membrane curing compound, so that the moisture which is already in the concrete, which is in itself is sufficient enough to have the complete hydration. The problem is because that water gets evaporated out due to our surrounding condition. So if we can prevent that moisture from escaping out, then our problem is solved. It is also curing. Or the second way is to replenish the moisture from the outside, which is being dissipated from the inside. So in this process, we keep spraying with the water, or we do pond curing by ponding with the water. We can also do like just wrapping it around with gunny bags, jute bags, and all these things, or the straws. So the idea of curing is not to give water from the outside. The idea is to prevent the moisture from escaping out and maintain that moisture level in the concrete surface, concrete structure, to complete the hydration process. So I think it is enough for today. I hope this helps. If my discussion helps, then please share this video within your circle with the people who are interested to get some knowledge of the practical working in the civil engineering field, not the bookish knowledge. See, we all have books, we can learn from there, but the thing is that in books we learn through small topics, but in practical works we have to integrate everything as per the site condition to optimize the solution. So I hope this helps you out. If it helps, then please do share this video and help me to be motivated for upcoming with many more videos like this, because I am spending my time with you guys. I could have taken rest right now. I am just coming out of the office, but I am sharing this as because I know there is genuine necessity to impart knowledge to engineering fraternity, which are not gained due to the improper teaching qualities which we are having in most of the engineering colleges, and also due to the lack of the exposure on these sites. Okay, have a good time, good night.